Hi, it's Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we're taking a look at the MSI MAG Z690 Tomahawk Wi-Fi. This is the DDR5 version of this particular board. There is a DDR4 version as well, but it's come to the point now, this board has been out, believe it or not, 2 years, pretty much almost to the day that we're making this actual video, and the prices have tumbled considerably. This board, when it was originally released back in 2021, was around about the $300 mark. I've managed to pick this one up yesterday on Amazon with one of those warehouse deals. I managed to pick this up for just slightly under £130. Hence why I'm figuring at this time of year, coming up to Christmas time, there's bound to be some good offers on DDR5. This is probably the best time to pounce on one of these boards and update my platform. So at the moment I'm using a 13900K on the B670 Tomahawk, which we reviewed a little while back, which I'll link in the video description so you can check out if you want to. But I figured now is the time to make a bit of a jump, go to a Z-class platform and enjoy the benefits of DDR5, which is going to be beneficial in things like video editing, which obviously we do a little bit of. When it comes to gaming performance, there isn't a huge difference between DDR4 and DDR5, and it's kind of swings and roundabouts. If you do a little bit of tweaking on one platform or the other, you'll find that they're pretty much like for like. Although, having said that, now that DDR5 is starting to find its stride, and also with some of the newer chips available, such as the Hynix A-class, those are doing really well and we're starting to reach some really high speeds. Now this board actually supports up to 192 gigabytes of RAM across 4 RAM slots, and potentially, well, from the manual it says it will support up to DDR6400, although having looked on the website today, there is actually a QVL listing for some RAM at 6800, and people have used this board with higher as well. Obviously your mileage may vary depending on what chips you're getting and where you're getting them from, and also the silicon lottery of what your processor will actually do, being that the memory controller is now built into the processor. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get on and take a look at this motherboard. This isn't going to be a review as such because I've just got it. Just going to go through the features, the ports, what it can and can't do, and who I think this is right for. Ultimately, I've got it for such a ridiculous price at the moment that it's kind of silly not to, especially for a Z-class board. So yeah, my view may be slightly skewed. Anyway, let's get on with it. So this is the board, as you can see. Very nice looking board. MSI, there's 3 main groups of motherboards. So you've got the MAG, the MEG and the MPG, all of which have different kind of price tags and feature sets, that kind of thing. Officially, the MAG group is actually the kind of bottom tier, but there is a slightly lower as well. So you've got some of the Pro boards, etc. But this, the Tomahawk, is the kind of entry level into some of the more premium boards of the Arsenal gaming range. When it comes to the actual unboxing experience, my experience will be a little bit different from yours because this is a used board from Amazon's warehouse. The packaging was a little bit beat up and there were a few items missing, such as the stickers, which I'm not entirely bothered about. There is normally a USB drive which comes with all the drivers on. That was missing also, and also 2 of the drive retention screws, which possibly are already on the board already, but I've not seen a board without them, so I'm not entirely sure. But I'm pleased to say the board in itself seems to be intact, and I've checked the pins, nothing seems to be bent, although there was a very strange little bit of grass or something in the USB 3.0 front panel header connector. Not sure how that got there, but it's not there now. On the back of the box, it gets a little bit more interesting in terms of what it supports, so we'll quickly go through that. So we've got a robust power design. So this features a 16+1+1 VRM phase, all of which are digital, and each one is a 70 amp. So that's pretty decent. A lot of potential ability to throughput, a lot of power there to processors, especially things like 13900, 14900, etc. You've also got quadruple M.2 slots. So yes, 4 M.2 slots on the motherboard. That is excellent. 3 of which are PCI Express Gen 4x4, 1 of which is PCI Express Gen 3x4. So lots of storage options there as well. You also got the Lightning 20G, so that is the fastest USB port on here. So we've got USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C, 20 gigabit per second. You also got Wi-Fi 6E and also Bluetooth 5.3 built in. You've got the audio boost. You've also got DDR5 support, as we've already alluded to. You've got Lightning Gen 5, which we've kind of mentioned as well. So this is a 6-layer PCB, which is always a nice thing to have. You've also got 2.5 gigabit LAN, which is supplied by Intel, so that's the i225. You've also got the M.2 Shield Frozzer, or the cooling solutions on each one of the M.2 slots. You've also got some specs on the bottom left of the box, and also on the right you've got an I/O overview. So let's take a tour of the board and see what it's all about, see what connections we've got. So we'll start in the top left-hand corner, as we generally tend to. So in the top corner, you've got two EPS connectors for 12-volt power for your processor. So you are going to be able to deliver a considerable amount of juice there, should you need to. You also got very large heat sinks over the VRM there, very weighty. This board has been tested previously by Hardware Unboxed and actually comes in really well. Does a very good job as regard to VRM temperatures, so we've got no issues there whatsoever. In the middle, we've got the LGA 1700 socket. Now this board originally when it came out was for the 12th gen Intel processors. It also supports the 13th gen with BIOS updates, and also now, as of December 2023, also supports 14th gen processors as well, but potentially you might need a BIOS update. Next we'll move along the top, so we've got a CPU header, then a pump header. This board actually, I should say, has got 8 connections for fans or pumps on here, so that's a lot of options there. So you've got 2 at the top here, another one on the side there, another one at the bottom, another 3 along the bottom there, and another one there, so 8 in total, which is awesome. You've got 4 RAM slots, as I said, supporting up to 192 gigabytes of RAM, so that's 48 gig sticks, DDR5. Speed supported officially up to 6400, but people have overclocked it and taken it further from that. Again, it's going to be down to the silicon lottery of the memory controller on your processor, which is going to be the real defining factor in that. Moving across from those 2 fan headers, we've got a addressable RGB, so 5-volt 3-pin addressable RGB. Next to that there is a 12-volt RGB, so for older RGB systems you can use that as well. Fan header there. Next to that underneath we've got the diagnostic debug. These are absolutely great. I've said this so many times before, one of the first things that we say on our Discord if someone joins, if you've got a technical problem, which of course you're free to do so, first thing we ask, have you got a diagnostic debug on your motherboard? And if so, what is it saying? This is really handy now, especially with modern motherboards, especially ones which have got LGA pins and those sockets. It's all a little bit of a nightmare, and especially with DDR5 as well. So you've got a lot of things that can potentially go wrong here. It's really handy to have those debug LEDs to see what the potential problem is if you have a no boot situation, or maybe you're just not too sure what is supposed to be the outcome and you're waiting for your PC to fire up and there's nothing on the screen. At least you can look at your diagnostic LEDs and see if it's doing RAM training or something like that. Underneath that, 24-pin power connector. Below that, we've got USB 3.2 Gen 1 front panel connections, and we've also got a USB 3.2 Gen 2 front panel connection for Type-C. Underneath that, big heatsink there over the Z690 chipset. No fans required on this. This cooler will do absolutely fine. It's quite a chunky one as well. Underneath that actually, just to the right hand side, there are 2 SATA ports tucked away nicely in the side there, which also join up with the 4 on the bottom. So you've got 6 SATA ports in total here. So this is going to support RAID as well. So if you want to do RAID 5 or something like that, you can do with those older SATA drives. The choice is down to you. Before we go and look at the I/O at the bottom, let's go back over to this side and take a look at what we've got in terms of M.2 and PCI Express. So the top slot here, slot number 1, which they've kindly marked up with number 1, is PCI Express Gen 4x4, so nice and fast for your transfers there. Moving down to slot 2, we've got another PCI Express Gen 4x4 slot, and at the bottom here we've got 3 and 4. So we've got a PCI Express Gen 4x4 and also a PCI Express Gen 3x4. The PCI Express Gen 3 is hosted by the chipset, as is the other 2 slots there as well. The top one is directly from the CPU. In terms of PCI Express, so top slot here, PCI Express Gen 5, that is a full x16 slot, also with the upgraded armour around the outside to keep it all nice in place. And you'll notice actually if you look at the back of the motherboard, there's no pin sticking through the back. So these are using the new surface mount technology, so there's no degradation in signal, which is going to be really necessary for PCI Express Gen 5 graphics cards. Underneath that, we've got a single PCI Express Gen 3 x1 port there, and underneath that there's another 2 x16 size slots, both of which are PCI Express Gen 3 x4. These are going to be absolutely great, so if you're a content creator and you want to stick in a capture card, then these are going to be fantastic. PCI Express Gen 3 x4 is more than enough for 4K capture, very easy to do. So that's a really nice thing to have, especially them being a little bit lower down to give you a bit more room by your graphics card. So now we'll try and take a closer look at the I/O at the bottom. So at the bottom here, there is a TPM connector. So if you want to plug in a TPM, you can do, although I don't know why they put this on nowadays. Realistically, TPM, the FTPM is built into the processor, so you don't really need that. Maybe some companies or businesses want to have their own. I don't know, maybe they do. A fan header at the bottom there front panel I/O for connecting up things like your power switch, reset button, hard drive LEDs, etc. Above that, 4-pin connector, that is for a speaker, BOS speaker. Then you've got a JCI, which is a chassis intrusion switch, should you want to use that. We've also got our 4 SATA ports, as we said before. Next up, a pair of USB 2.0 headers, so if you want to hook up some of those for maybe a Corsair Commander, that sort of thing, or maybe some extra USB ports on the back, potentially you might want to do that, some other peripherals. Then you've got another fan header. Moving along from that, you've got the Thunderbolt add-in card, so you can actually plug in a Thunderbolt add-in card should you need to give you a little bit more faster transfers, USB 4s, that kind of stuff. Next to that, you've got another 2 PWM fan headers. And next to that, you've got 2 5-volt 3-pin addressable RGB headers, so 3 of those in total. Next to that, you've got the JBAT1, which is the CMOS reset. And then you've got your front panel connections for your HD audio. Above that, you've got some other pins. JT1 is, there's basically like a tuning port thing. I've never actually seen one in real life, but apparently there is a tuning port or like LCD display, which you can do tuning to the system by just pressing buttons on a panel, which is pretty cool. I think it might be built into some of MSI's cases as well, some of the high-end ones, but realistically, you're probably never going to need that at all. You've got some other debug connections down the bottom. Moving across, we've got our audio. So this is Realtek's 4080 USB codec. That's quite a nice thing to have. Decent audio, 7.1 surround there supported. And you've got your CMOS battery and the very last of the fan headers right at the very back there. Moving around to the I/O. So the I/O actually isn't too bad. Maybe I would have liked to see possibly another 2 USBs on there, maybe a USB 2s, USB 3s. Let me know what you think in the comments. It's not too bad overall. So you've got HDMI 2.0, you've got DisplayPort 1.4. So if you're using a processor with integrated graphics, then you can use those for outputs. You've also got then 2 USB 2.0s, one of which is a BOS flashback port. So if you do want to do a BOS flashback, you can use that port. When you're using it in Windows or operating systems, that just acts as a normal USB port. Underneath that, USB 3.2 Gen 1, so 5 gigabit per second. And next to that, you've got the BOS flashback button. Of course, we will do a video on how to do the BOS flash on this board at some point. Moving across, USB 3.2 Gen 2, 10 gigabit per second. So you've got 3 of those ports there. And then we've got the fastest port on here, which is the USB 3.2 Gen 2x2, so it's 20 gigabit per second on the Type-C. You then got the Wi-Fi 6E, also Bluetooth 5.3, as we mentioned earlier, nice and fast there. And then you've got your output jacks for your analog speakers. Also, there is a digital speed diff as well for optical, should you wish to use it. On the back of the board, not a great deal to speak of, apart from the usual MSI keep out zones for where the pillars are supposed to be. And like I said earlier, if you look here, there's no pins actually showing for the PCI Express. So those are all surface mounted ones, so preventing damage from the back, which is handy, and also increasing the signal strength. So there we go, that is the MSI MAG Z690 Tomahawk Wi-Fi DDR5 version. I'm really excited to get this in the system and see what improvements I can get on my system. It does seem there is going to be a little bit of a performance improvement using DDR5, and like I said at the beginning of the video, now that DDR5 is starting to find its stride and getting a little bit more stable and the speeds are getting better, everything seems to be evolving, so it's really nice to be able to pick up a Z-class board from an Intel processor to actually be able to unlock it, do some overclocking or do some other tweaking in the Intel Extreme Tuning utility, and just have a real good play with it. And it isn't going to cost an absolute fortune. I was very loath to buy this board when it first came out. It's sort of the £300 mark, but now 2 years later, around about £130 as a Amazon warehouse deal, which are always great deals. Well, generally always good deals if you can pick one up. They don't last long, but when they do, they are pretty special. So I'm really pleased with this. I think if I was to buy this on the used market, eBay, something like that, you'd be looking probably £150 to £200. So I feel like I've got a really good bargain here. It's a weird thing with doing these videos on YouTube, especially when it comes to doing the Intel platform. There doesn't seem to be that much interest in it, but hopefully with boards like this being available on the market at substantially reduced costs, and also with the LGA 1700 socket possibly nearing an end, maybe we're going to start seeing some price reductions and some really good bargains to be had and reinvigorate the interest in Intel. But let me know what you think about this in the comments section below. But I think that's going to wrap this video up. I've been Mike, this is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.